CB4 wasn't supposed to work. The satire was too sharp, the targets were too powerful, and the comedian behind it was still years away from becoming a superstar. Somehow it all came together anyway. Get ready for 15 revelations that will change how you see this movie forever, plus one jaw-dropping bonus at the end that absolutely nobody talks about. So speed up with me, because the list starts now. Number 1. Charlie Murphy brought a real gun to his audition, walking into an audition room with a loaded weapon tucked into your waistband. That's exactly what happened here, and it changed one man's entire career. Charlie Murphy wanted the role of Gusto, the gangster whose identity gets stolen by Chris Rock's character. His first audition bombed completely. Chris Rock pulled him aside afterward and gave him a single note: be meaner. So Charlie came back for round 2, but this time he didn't just act like Gusto, he became him. He showed up with 2 real henchmen standing behind him like bodyguards, dressed in full gangster regalia, jewelry and all. And in his waistband sat a loaded Glock 9. Not a prop, an actual firearm borrowed from Ray Murphy Jr. Every other actor in that room used finger guns and pretend weapons. Charlie pulled out real steel, and the room went dead silent. He got the part on the spot. That single audition became legendary in Hollywood circles. The moment that launched Charlie Murphy's entire acting career. It was his first major role, the one that put him on the map, and it happened because he took the assignment more literally than anyone could have imagined. Years later, insiders still call it one of the boldest audition stunts ever pulled in a comedy film. Number 2. His on-set stories became Chappelle's show gold. While the cameras rolled on this movie, Charlie Murphy couldn't stop talking between takes, and nobody realized how valuable that would become. He told wild stories about growing up as Eddie Murphy's older brother, about the celebrities he'd met, and the chaos he'd witnessed firsthand. Stories about Prince, stories about Rick James, stories so outrageous that people assumed he was exaggerating. Chris Rock listened to every single one, laughed along, and quietly filed them away in his memory. A decade later, Dave Chappelle launched his own sketch show and needed fresh material. That's when Charlie Murphy's True Hollywood Stories was born as one of the most beloved recurring segments in television history. The Rick James sketches, the Prince basketball game, the couch, the pancakes, all of it traced back to conversations that happened on this very film set. Chris Rock later admitted he wished he'd thought to use those stories first, since he'd heard them years before Chappelle ever did. But Dave pulled the trigger, and television history was made. From a movie set in the early 90s to a cultural phenomenon a decade later, those stories waited over 10 years before the world finally got to hear them properly. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 3. The sequel that never happened. Almost 20 years after this film hit theaters, its star sat down for a radio interview to promote an unrelated project. Halfway through, he dropped a bombshell nobody expected. He said there might be a new version of the group, that he and his co-writer had been kicking around ideas. The internet lit up instantly. A sequel, after all that time, seemed almost too good to be true. He explained his angle. When they made the original, nobody imagined these rappers would ever get old. Now he knew plenty of aging rap legends, and he thought there was a fresh angle in showing performers clinging to relevance decades later. The pitch actually made a lot of sense. The original mocked young men faking street credibility, so a follow-up could mock older men refusing to let go of the spotlight. The genre had changed completely, and the jokes practically wrote themselves. Fans waited and waited and kept waiting. It's now been well over a decade since that interview aired. No sequel ever materialized, no reunion tour, no official announcement, just a tantalizing what if that lives on in old interview clips and message boards. Maybe it's still coming one day, or maybe some movies really are better left as a single perfect moment in time. Number 4. Eazy-E was the real-life blueprint for McGusto. Look closely at the film's central rap villain, and you'll notice something the filmmakers never bothered to hide. The hairstyle, the sunglasses, the swagger, all of it mirrors one very specific real rapper almost exactly. This wasn't accidental at all. The writers modeled the entire character directly after the Ruthless Records founder, right down to his voice and public persona. This movie was essentially a parody of an entire influential rap group, and this character served as their stand-in. Here's the surprising part though, the real rapper knew exactly what was happening, and he loved every second of it. According to one of the writers, he was particularly fun to work with because he understood the joke completely and happily played along. Deep down, he seemed to know his own gangster persona was partly performance, a business strategy built to sell records and provoke media outrage. This film exposed that entire game, and the man who helped invent it in the first place found the whole thing hilarious rather than insulting. He even appeared briefly on screen himself, marking his only feature film appearance ever. A real hip-hop icon poking fun at his own manufactured image inside a movie built specifically to satirize it. Number 5. The pitch that happened in a nightclub. Before this became an actual movie, it was just a loose concept between two friends. A rap mockumentary, essentially their version of a classic mockumentary format applied to hip-hop culture. But an idea like that needed approval from the real players it was mocking. So one night in Los Angeles, during the absolute peak of the most dangerous and influential rap group in the country, the two writers ran into two of its members at a nightclub. They walked right up and pitched the entire movie on the spot, in the middle of a crowded dance floor. One member listened and found it absolutely hilarious. According to one of the writers, he immediately understood the satire, since he already knew his tough public image was partly a marketing creation designed to move records. The idea of mocking fake gangsters, pretending to be real gangsters, landed perfectly with a man who understood the performance side of the genre better than almost anyone alive. He gave his blessing right there in the club, and the project moved forward with real credibility behind it. The very group being parodied ended up becoming part of the joke themselves, all because of one spontaneous conversation on a dance floor. Number 6. A fictional town named after a real writer. The film's setting is a fictional suburb built specifically to parody a real and infamous neighborhood, and the joke seems obvious on the surface. Low money, no money, a fake tough neighborhood with a deliberately silly name. But there's a second layer almost nobody catches. That town's name is actually the real last name of one of the 3 credited screenwriters on this project. So when the filmmakers needed a name for their fictional setting, they simply borrowed their own co-writer's surname. It's an inside joke hiding in plain sight throughout the entire runtime. Every single time a character mentions where they're from, they're unknowingly crediting one of the people who wrote the script. The film even includes a fake acknowledgement buried in the end credits, thanking the residents of this made-up town by a completely fictional zip code, a fictional place with a fictional address, quietly named after a very real person who helped create the whole story. Most audiences watched the entire movie without ever noticing the connection, but that screenwriter certainly noticed every single time his own name appeared on screen, disguised as a punchline. Number 7. The rappers never actually rapped. 3 actors play the fictional rap group at the center of this story, delivering verse after verse with total confidence. Here's the twist. None of them actually performed the vocals themselves. Every single rap performance was recorded by real hip-hop artists working behind the scenes. The lead actor's rapping voice came from a Compton-based artist, his co-star's vocals were provided by another established rapper, and the third character's voice belonged to yet another performer entirely. That means every performance scene in this movie, the concerts, the music videos, all of it, is essentially lip-synced from start to finish. The actors are mouthing words that other professionals recorded in a studio somewhere else entirely. That creates a strange and satisfying layer of irony once you notice it. This is a film about fake rappers pretending to be authentic gangsters, and the very actors playing those fake rappers were themselves faking the actual rapping. It's fakeness stacked on top of fakeness, deliberately or not. Once audiences learn this detail, it's almost impossible to watch the concert scenes the same way again, since the satire clearly goes several layers deeper than most casual viewers ever realized on a first watch. Number 8. The cameo that got cut entirely. Here's a name almost nobody expects to hear connected to this project. A beloved sitcom child star turned respected Hollywood director, known for directing several major studio hits, actually co-owned the production company behind this film. So he offered to appear in a small cameo, not as a producer credit, but as an actual on-screen appearance alongside the cast. They filmed the entire scene, he showed up and performed it, and then the filmmakers cut him completely from the final release. The reasoning, according to a trade publication report from the time, was that his presence felt inconsistent with the rest of the cast. Think about who else appears in this film: legitimate hip-hop icons, real rap legends, and even a professional basketball superstar doing a cameo. Real cultural figures embedded throughout an authentic satire. And then suddenly, this particular director standing awkwardly inside a gangster rap parody simply didn't fit the tone at all. So the filmmakers made the difficult call and removed the footage entirely before release. Somewhere in a studio vault, there's footage of a massively successful director appearing in this movie that essentially nobody outside the production has ever actually seen. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next with strange behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. Number 9. Number 1, despite a historic blizzard. This film hit theaters on the exact same day a massive winter storm slammed into the entire East Coast. Newspapers at the time called it the storm of the century, a superstorm that stretched from the Caribbean all the way up into Canada, dumping record-breaking snowfall across major cities. Airports shut down, cities came to a standstill, and most people understandably stayed home rather than risk the roads. It was arguably the worst possible timing imaginable for any movie release. And yet this film still opened at number 1 at the box office that weekend, pulling in over $6 million across just over 100 theaters during the middle of a historic snowstorm. People genuinely trudged through record snowfall just to watch a gangster rap parody in theaters. The film eventually grossed close to $18 million total, against a budget of roughly $6 million, essentially tripling its investment. In industry terms, that's an enormous financial win for a comedy this specific and this niche. It marked the lead actor's first true starring role and his first screenwriting credit, and it worked despite brutal weather conditions. Reviews at the time were genuinely mixed, but audiences clearly didn't care, proving that sometimes the product itself simply overcomes terrible timing. Number 10. 7 people from this film are gone now. This movie came out over 30 years ago, and the losses connected to its cast have quietly mounted over the decades. The rapper who inspired the film's central villain passed away just 2 years after his only feature film appearance, from AIDS-related complications at only 30 years old. One beloved sketch comedy veteran was killed by his own wife several years later. A veteran sitcom actress passed from kidney failure. Another supporting cast member died from diabetes complications. A legendary soul singer who wrote one of the most iconic film themes ever and later voiced a beloved animated character died from a stroke years afterward. Charlie Murphy himself, the man whose audition story opened this entire list, passed away from leukemia in the mid-2010s. And the actor who played one of the group's other members died from a heart attack in the early 2020s after building an entirely separate career playing a hospital nurse across nearly 200 episodes of a long-running medical drama. 7 people connected to one single comedy film, gone across 3 decades. It's a sobering reminder of just how much time has actually passed since this movie first hit theaters and how many of its most memorable faces are no longer with us. Number 11. Every song was secretly a cover. The soundtrack features 3 original songs performed by the fictional group at the story's center, and none of them are actually original at all. Every single track is a direct parody of an existing real rap classic from the era. One song directly spoofs one of the most influential rap anthems ever recorded, matching its flow and energy almost beat for beat, just with deliberately ridiculous lyrics about a fictional suburb instead. Another track parodies an explicit hip-hop classic, cranking the vulgar content up to absurd new levels for comedic effect. And their cover of an old-school party anthem is essentially a direct homage to one of the genre's founding records. 3 songs, 3 templates, 3 real originals being lovingly mocked throughout. The genius of this soundtrack isn't that the filmmakers invented clever new comedy songs from scratch. It's that they took genuinely beloved rap records and pushed them slightly past the edge of straight parody. If you didn't recognize the originals, the jokes still landed perfectly fine on their own. But if you did know the source material, the comedy essentially doubled in effectiveness, rewarding longtime hip-hop fans with an extra layer of recognition most casual viewers completely missed. Number 12. He keeps turning down reunion offers. Promoters have reportedly approached the film's star multiple separate times over the years, asking whether his fictional rap group would consider reuniting to perform live at actual music festivals, real stages, real paying crowds, a completely fictional rap group from a 90s comedy performing alongside legitimate touring artists. He's called the entire idea crazy in interviews, and honestly, he's not wrong. But here's the stranger part. People genuinely want to see it happen. Fans have expressed real interest in watching these fictional characters perform their most ridiculous songs live in front of thousands of concert goers. Those songs were written purely as parody, jokes crafted specifically to mock excessive gangster rap content. Yet decades later, they've somehow taken on a life of their own within hip-hop culture. He's turned down every single offer that's come his way so far. Maybe he's protecting the legacy of the original joke. Maybe he doesn't want to blur the line between satire and reality, which is exactly the thing this film was mocking in the first place. Or maybe someday he'll finally say yes to one of these offers. Stranger things have absolutely happened before in comedy history, and reunion tours have a funny way of eventually happening anyway. Number 13. The post-credit scene nobody expected. If you walked out the moment the credits started rolling, you missed something genuinely strange tucked at the very end. After all the names finish scrolling, there's a short bonus scene featuring the lead actor again, but this time he's not playing either of his two main characters from the film. He's playing an entirely new character, a notoriously cheap man who approaches a newspaper vendor and asks how much a paper costs. When he hears the price, he tries to haggle the vendor down, then asks if the vendor will simply read him the headlines out loud for free instead. That's the entire joke. A man so cheap he won't buy a newspaper but still wants someone to summarize it for him at no cost. It has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the movie's plot or characters. No connection to the fictional rap group, no connection to the main story at all. Just a random, standalone comedy bit tacked on after the credits finish. At the time this film released, post-credit scenes weren't standard practice at all in mainstream comedies. Big franchise filmmaking hadn't made them mandatory yet, but this film included one anyway, purely as a small reward for anyone who stayed seated until the very end. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations. And tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. Number 14. The director wasn't even the first choice. The woman who ultimately directed this film was genuinely perfect for the job. She'd already directed real music videos for some of the most respected names in hip-hop, and she understood the culture visually in a way few outsiders ever could. She could parody the genre convincingly because she'd literally helped build its visual aesthetic in the first place. But surprisingly, she wasn't the production's original choice at all. The first director attached was a British music video director who'd previously worked with major pop and hip-hop acts, but he ultimately passed on the project entirely. So the producers turned to her instead, and it turned out to be exactly the right call for the material. She brought instant credibility since she'd actually worked with the real artists this film was gently spoofing throughout. She knew precisely what authentic rap music videos looked like because she'd personally shot several of them herself before this project. That same year, she married a member of a legendary alternative hip-hop group, and that very group ended up contributing a track to this film's soundtrack completely by coincidence. Her future husband's own group appeared on her movie's soundtrack before they were even officially married yet. Sometimes the entertainment industry really is an incredibly small and interconnected world, almost at the end, and the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. Bonus: the prophecy hidden inside a joke song. This is the one almost nobody talks about, and it might be the single strangest coincidence in the entire film's history. The group's biggest fictional hit song was written as an intentionally ridiculous, crude parody track, with lyrics pushed to absurd extremes purely to mock how explicit gangster rap had become by the early 90s. The entire point of the joke was that surely nobody would ever actually release a real hit song built around that exact premise. 9 years later, a completely different artist released a massive club anthem that shot all the way up to number 2 on the national singles chart, becoming one of the defining party songs of that entire decade. And the song's signature hook lyric matched this film's fictional joke song almost word for word, describing the exact same crude scenario in nearly identical language. A satirical joke written purely to mock the absurdity of the genre ended up predicting an actual chart-topping hit almost a decade before it existed. The writers thought they were simply exaggerating reality for comedic effect at the time. It turns out they were accidentally almost 10 years ahead of schedule instead. The parody quietly became the blueprint. And that's exactly the kind of detail that gets lost to time unless somebody actually goes back and connects the dots. And those were 15 strange facts about this cult classic, plus one bonus prophecy nobody saw coming. This film mattered more than most people ever gave it credit for, quietly shaping television comedy, predicting real chart hits, and launching at least one legendary acting career almost by accident. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which fact surprised you the most. And don't forget to suggest another movie or show that deserves its own list of strange behind-the-scenes facts. See you in the next video.